I'm Jim Ziegler, and this is the Dawg Pound. Oh, this is the first regular broadcast of the Dawg Pound in 6 or 7 months. We did 108 episodes previously. We discontinued it, and now we're bringing it back. One of the most popular shows on the internet. The Dawg Pound, featuring me, Jim Ziegler, the Alpha Dog, and the Queen of BDC. A good friend of mine, Miss Bobbie Herron. Hi, Bobbie.
Hi, how are you?
Tell me what's going on with you.
You know, living the dream every day. My daughter just had a baby. I guess that makes me a grandmother, which is so weird. But I'm in love. I'm absolutely in love. I'm stealing the baby this weekend,
A
actually.
grandma, okay.
Crazy.
You look older now that you mention it.
You know what I'm saying? You know what? Listen, I'm like fine wine. I age, I get more beautiful. It's a lucky thing that the universe has thrown me.
What can I say? Gorgeous woman. And one of the most brilliant women in the car business, the Empress of Executive Management, my friend, Jennifer Briggs. Hi, Jen.
Hey, Jim, I'm so excited to be here with everybody today. And we're back.
By popular demand.
The resident curmudgeon, Max Zanan, couldn't make it today. He's in the air flying to do some dental conference. I don't know what that's
like. He couldn't work his schedule of flight around what we got going on. Can you believe that? Of course he wouldn't. It's Max.
Former recently didn't retire. The former chairman of the National Association of Automobile Dealers, the CEO of the Pohanka organization, my friend, Jeff Pohanka. Hi, Jeff.
Hey, Jim. Great to be here. Now, it's NADA. It's the National Automobile Dealers Association. You know that, of course. I'm the immediate past chairman. My term just ended earlier this month.
Absolutely. I saw you hand over the gavel or whatever that was. And so now you're semi-retired from that position. What's your new title?
Immediate past chair.
Immediate past chair. Okay.
Still in the executive committee, and I'm here in the Washington, D.C. swamp and close to NADA's headquarters. I live 9 miles away, so I may not have the complete title, but I'm still, hands are still involved in all the sausage making.
We're going to be friends.
And today we're going to refer to him as the resident communist. Strategy from Jason. Jason Harris, strategy with Jason. Hi, big guy.
Hey, I'm ready to fly my EV freak flag. Let's go.
Okay. We're not going to barbecue you that much. And I'm telling you, a woman that I have great respect for, co-professor last week at Northwood University. They're still talking about you. April Simmons.
Hey everyone, I am so happy to be here. You guys are all my favorite people, and Jeff, I know we're going to be fast friends. Super excited. I do have to say that I am sorry, Jason. I'm sorry about how often you are going to speak and be wrong today.
I'm good with this. I got my buddy Jeff right here to back me up, so I'm good.
I'm just Jeff to back you up.
That's awesome.
I had to pull out my
Today we're going to talk about electric vehicles.
Whoop, whoop.
Let's just get our very first show out of the way with EV.
What we think is the future, what is the current situation, and no better expert to head us off and to start the conversation. Jeff, take the floor for a second. What is happening with EVs?
Well, electric cars aren't new. We had electric cars over a century ago. And, clearly it's one of the buzzes. Autonomous cars have been a big buzz too. I don't have one to sell. Electric cars will be part of our future. The question is, how big a part? It's a complicated subject. I consider myself a student of electrification. I'm an auto dealer. I even bought a Tesla because I wanted to learn what all the buzz was about. And, Sun Tzu said, would be proud, know your opposition, know yourself, and have no fear in 100 battles. And I don't see this as the opposition necessarily. The question is, I think you have to understand what's happening in the world. The manufacturers are responding. First, there are two things. One is they want to emulate the success of Tesla. Charles Lindbergh was first to fly solo across the Atlantic. Who was second? Well, we don't know. Of course we don't. So being first is a real advantage, I think. And they think if we just follow that path, Tesla's path, direct, maybe direct sales or variation electrification, will have that same success. But all the followers are not having that same success because the conditions have changed. Secondly, government mandates. If you look at, there's 3 areas of the world that are really important to manufacturers, not just the United States, but also Europe and China. GM sold more cars in China the past 10 years than the United States. It tells you how big a market that is. Their sales, retail sales, are 10 million more than the United States. And the Chinese government is encouraging the sale of new energy, which they call their electric cars, new energy cars. And they're really pushing for domestic Chinese manufacturers at the cost of GM or the Europeans or the Koreans or the Japanese.
Jeff, let me interrupt you a second. 15 years ago, I was the keynote speaker for the New Jersey State Dealers Convention. And in the audience was Malcolm Bricklin. And Malcolm Bricklin was trying to bring the Cherry automobile ashore, if you'll recall. And he had one dealer council member that signed up for it, Bob Cizzulli. He was the only, and I made a statement that day in my speech that Chinese cars would never come ashore in the current generation. And a lot of people disputed me about that prediction, but you know what? They bought existing manufacturers like Volvo, but they really haven't come ashore. Is that
well, there's just 3 things. I'll try to make this succinct. All the non-Chinese domestic manufacturers are going to try to push them out of China. Okay. And the way to keep market share is to have plug-in hybrids and electric cars. So they need electric cars to compete in that market. In Europe, they're going to ban the sale of gasoline cars 2035. So, they got to respond to that. And now
they backed off for that, haven't they?
And then in America, we're on the path to banning the sale of gasoline cars. I mean, we're probably going to have regulations come out in the next 30 days. They'll push 67% of sales, retail sales, be electric by 2032. So manufacturers are responding to this. What's not happening is consumer. They've overestimated demand. And for a lot of reasons, charging network, affordability, S&P Global did a study. You can't look at averages. If you compare the same, like say Honda Accord had an EV and Honda Accord had a gas, just Apple, which they don't have yet. Apples and apples, the EV costs 40% more. Affordability is an issue, particularly with high interest rates. So the consumer is not responding. The governments are pushing for this, for climate change, and there's real dubious if it really helps the climate or not. And all these things are happening very quickly. So the manufacturers try and respond to all these things. And it's very hard for them. And something's going to break. Something is going to break. The question is, what will it be?
Well, and there's a few things actually were to that same, S&P, I'm real tight with the guys over there. So I probably read the same report that you did that, they were predicting, electric vehicles to outnumber ICE vehicles by 2030 or 2035. I can't remember the exact number, but they have one major marketplace so far where the number of registrations have already outnumbered it, and that's San Francisco. So as you start seeing more major metropolitan areas start getting closer and closer and closer to the amount of ICE vehicles and electric vehicles, the infrastructure, it's just an indicator of the infrastructure.
Well, first of all, Jason, that ain't going to happen. I mean, let's look at reality. I mean, first of all, the infrastructure isn't there, and the infrastructure.
But Jim, I'll tell you why the infrastructure will be there. It's all about the margins. All right. Mm-hmm. If you ever own a gas station, when you resell gas, you're dealing with margins between 3 and 5%. All right. When you resell electricity in those charging stations, the average margin's 30%.
Okay. Let's go there. There's studies that show standalone DC fast charging stations above 50 kilowatts cannot be operated profitably no matter cannot be operated profitably without subsidies, cost of land, the charger, demand power charges, the maintenance, the upkeep. These are much more complicated than a gas pump. There are lots of studies. This is the unknown secret that's out there. And they're all losing hemorrhaging cash. ChargePoint, EVgo, they're hemorrhaging hundreds of millions of dollars. And what's happening is that in response to this drain of resources, they're increasing the cost of power, where a DC fast charge costs significantly more than gasoline in a lot of areas. Now, a lot of people don't know what demand power charges are. And even the factory doesn't know, even utilities don't know, but in some cases I've asked them. Demand power charges is the first 15 minutes, it's the highest consumption during 15 minutes in a billing cycle. Let's say that's in a monthly basis. Now, demand charges here in Maryland is $3.35 a kilowatt, which is substantially more than what you pay at residential 12, 13 cents. In California, it's $35 a kilowatt. So a 150 kilowatt charger in California without assistance, some kind of subsidy, demand charges, the first 15 minutes of the first charge of the billing cycle will cost the owner of the charging station $1,300. They're not passing on a consumer. The subsequent people margin, that's kind of negative margin, isn't it? They probably sold $6.
Last summer, they put out an edict in California that they asked EV owners not to drive their cars because they were in brownout situations.
Right. Well, but they also asked them not to use their air conditioners or their heat or their lights. That didn't mean it was less necessary to have those utilities.
No,
So in
the
other words,
significant part of that, Jim, it was the day after their mandates to EVs went into effect. The very next day, the government of California said, hang on, although we just said you can't have a free market, you're going to have to buy these at a certain percentage, but don't charge them because we can't support you. We are putting the cart before the horse here, guys. It's insane and ignoring what the American people want.
But it's good for the environment, right?
No,
Jeff?
it's not. Let's talk about coal powered
It's good for the environment. Come on.
No,
There's not a topic that gives this group more fired up. I'm so glad Max isn't on today, because the truth of the matter is it should be an option. It shouldn't be mandated to only have an EV, but it should be an option. And everybody wants to fight against what side they're on. Can we not live in the middle? Is it not okay to just have choices in this country? I don't know what happened the last couple of years, but it's just crazy.
Right, Bobbie, the
Well,
point is that
what was that, April?
it's supposed to be a choice, right? Like
Right, I agree.
that's what our country is founded on, that you have a choice in a free market to decide what it is you're going to buy. I don't have a problem saying if that's what my customer wants to buy, great, I'm going to sell it to you. I'm greedy like that. But at the end of the day, the number one thing that I get pushback on EVs, next to affordability, the number one thing that people talk about is the time. What do I mean by time?
The time it takes to charge.
How long does it take me to drive from point A to point B now, when I have to go way out of my route to find a charger and then sit there for 4 hours in line getting it charged, right? So time and the infrastructure is the key to the problem. I think even more than money. The time, I have to be at different places, and if I can't get there, that's a real problem. And
Well, I mean,
that's
but look, the average person's not driving over 300-400 miles a day. Like, I mean, I love we keep using this as a topic, but you know, the average consumer's drive is under 40 miles a day. Like,
Agreed.
I don't charge my EV, like I charge my EV like once a week. You know, like with the commute that I have, I drive it literally once a week, and that's the only time I have to plug the thing in.
Well, you are our resident granola muncher here, I'll tell you.
And but your EV is also not your only vehicle, Jason.
Because my EV has this, you know, insane sport mode where it like lowers its body and it now puts almost 1,000 pounds of torque. And I literally, you know, in a full three-row passenger SUV, smoke the Corvette Z06 next to me, you know, with him and his girlfriend. And I got the entire family in the back.
Why range is important? Why range is important? It reduces the uncertainty of where I'm going to get my next charge.
Right.
If I could get a charge every 140 miles, that's uncertain. I mean, we're going to get this. Where am I going to get this? Now, look, here's the thing: is home charging is very convenient.
Yeah.
I have home charging. But look at this. Half the people will never have home charging, the convenience of home charging, or the reduced expense. They don't own their home. They rent a home, live in an apartment building, have street parking. And half that own a home do not have electrical service to put it level 2 charging.
I hadn't thought about that.
An additional improvement in their electrical service. They don't have the amperage. So 3/4 of Americans will have to use a DC fast charging network. You only get 80% charge. It costs more. It takes more time. And a bunch are unbroken. I don't know where they're at. I got to go out of my way. That is the failure. Now, if the EV costs just as much as the gas and I charge it in 5 minutes like my gas, is probably less maintenance. Yeah, that's great. It's not true though.
Right.
And I need 300 miles to know I don't have that anxiety for a while. Where am I getting my charge?
100%. And look, we had the same infrastructure conversation back when we switched from the horse and buggy over to the vehicle. All right, no, I'm serious though. I mean, why would I leave?
I laugh because I like the analogy.
Here's the answer for that. Your horses and buggy is still there. You're just changing their food.
That's it. Like, I mean, it's always
you're not changing the horse or a buggy. You're just changing the horse's food. It's still a car. You just change its force supply of energy.
But the exact same conversation around infrastructure was happening then as it is happening now, right? Okay. Like, why switch to petrol when there's grass out there and I can feed my horse with it?
Here's the number one thing. The number one driver behind this is climate change. The problem is the carbon footprint EV is significantly larger than a gas car. You may never, ever have a smaller carbon footprint because of all the mining. You got to mine 250 tons of mineral to make the battery. We don't know how we're going to dispose of the batteries to begin with. Oh, we'll figure that out. Oh, that's great. We'll figure it out. Hopefully some send them to Africa, right?
I think Elon Musk is going to ship them in SpaceX. And
I was going to say we're going to have some type of satellite or island in space of a bunch of these
shoot them into space. Elon.
Well, if anybody can figure out getting into space,
Elon will put them on SpaceX and send them into the sun.
They're hard to recycle.
Into the sun.
Wow. But here, look, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Mm-hmm. And that's the problem. Read an article by Mark Mills. He doesn't have an axe to grind. It's called Electric Vehicles for Everyone, the Impossible Dream. And look, I have home charging. I have a smart meter. I do late night charging. I do all these things. Okay. I want to learn. When I plug in my EV, my home power consumption goes up 500%. Now, my wife came in to be 1,000%. I know this because I can compare the night before when I charged and the night after that. I have 12 houses on my street. If everybody plugged 2 cars in simultaneously, we had 12,000% increase in power consumption. That transformer is going to explode out on the utility pole. Just think of that. When I tell this to people, they're like shocked. And I don't live in a small house, so I go up 500%. That's a lot of juice.
And what about the spontaneous combustion? For heaven's sake! I mean,
ICE vehicles combust just as often as.
Yeah, they do, but you can put those suckers out.
I got an answer for that. It's older gas cars that are burning up that have, they're not maintained. It's newer EVs that are burning. That's the difference.
Well, gosh, don't say that, Jeffrey. We're going to be in a cash for clunker situation again. Does everybody remember how that went? Jeez.
I haven't seen a gas car.
Teasing, actually.
I made a lot of money, but it took a lot of hours.
I haven't seen a gas car that sank 2 ships full of thousands of cars. Have you?
Yeah. How many? Yeah, they've sunk ships and raw materials. Raw materials are scarce. That's why they call them rare earth minerals.
Right.
I mean, maybe Bobbie cringe here. You can't beat those little slave kids hard enough to production. I'm not against them. I like electric cars. There's a market. Dealers need affordable, desirable electric cars because there's a market. If dealers don't have it, someone else is going to take that business from us. So they're here to stay. They should be. They're kind of neat. Their performance is good. The tech is good. The question is it 100%? Is it 50%? Is it 10%? We don't know. We're going to find out because the consumer's smart. And look, if they don't like the choices, they'll buy a used car, fix their old car. That's not good for the environment, public safety, or the economy. That's what's going to happen. And look,
Well, and to your point, Jeff, I think it's going to find its own space, right? I mean, it's no different than hypercars and supercars end up finding their own space.
Right.
Not every single person needs to own a supercharged 6.3 liter V8 that produces over 700 horsepower in a pickup truck. But hey, they found their market and they sell the crap out of them, right? So, but yeah.
Jason, I have always said it's going to level out at 10%.
It is going to find its identity. I mean, look,
I think it's going to level out at 10%. I mean, there's always going to be a market for EVs, but it's not mainstream. As a consultant for 35 years, I've said I do business with what most of the people will do most of the time, not what some of the people will do some of the time.
So, yeah. So where is this 67% target coming from? Because it's not coming from market conditions or research on what the actual consumers can afford and need.
There's no market research, Jennifer.
Yeah, so we're just got a number that we're trying to hit, or someone is trying to hit, without considering so many factors. It does.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
April's so quiet right now. It's scary. What's going on in your head right now, April?
It's interesting. What I'm trying to do is not say, jump on to anyone, because it's always a hot topic. But there is something that Jeff pointed out that I think is why I've been so passionate about the infrastructure. Besides the time, the inconvenience to trying to actually move around, it's actually being able to charge at home that really is a bigger problem than people understand. But I worked for Toyota for 15 years. And I was with them when the first Prius came out and we first learned about hybrids. And then we started having, the ability to plug them in. And when that first happened, we had to tell customers, you may or may not be able to do a quicker charging at home. And that still exists today. You have to reach out to the electric company to find out how many of your neighbors already have one. Because if they have one, you might not be able to get one because of what you had mentioned about if my electricity goes up and everyone in my neighborhood had one, guess what happens? Boom. So I told my husband, I got real feisty about it because he's a fan. He's kind of, he's like, it could work for us. I'm like, it could work for us, but forcing it at these numbers, until I see a shovel going in the ground showing me where these new power plants are going up, then we can start talking about that we might be serious about it. But
April, Walmart is installing all across the country charging stations. Yeah, are Walmart customers the average EV buyer? I don't think so. Unless you can buy EVs with your EBT cards.
Exactly, not yet. And also, you know that Walmart.
Because Bobbie, we were just talking about this before we started recording. What was one of the best vehicles we used to push when we did non-prime stuff? And that was that bubble of a golf cart, that Mitsubishi iMeave. I could get literally anybody in the world finance on the Mitsubishi iMeave. I can guarantee it.
Here's the driving force. Here's the driving force. You can do a lot of harm by trying to do the right thing. The whole idea has to do with energy, the war on fossil fuels. Mm-hmm. Fossil fuels have extended life expectancy, the quality of life, gotten people out of poverty. Poverty is the lowest in history. It used to be 90% of people in poverty. Now it's like 10%. Fossil fuels are responsible for that. So the whole idea is that CO2 is bad. We need wind and solar. We need zero emissions. Well, how do you make those things, with fossil fuels? And that will fuel these cars. That's the thought process behind it. Problem is there's no solar at night. So where's the power coming from? Here's where it's going to break. And that's the lowest, the smallest gap between power availability and demand is around 7 p.m., 8 p.m. Everybody comes home, cranks everything up. They got the lights on, they're charging their car.
Cooking dinner. Yeah.
At the same time, that narrow span, they're reducing our baseload energy sources, going to wind and solar, which is no solar at night, and wind doesn't always blow. The wind, when power demand is highest, it's very hot and very cold. The wind doesn't blow then. So now we need lots of batteries, which we could not afford, trillions of dollars, batteries to hold the energy when there is sun and when there is wind. The time we can't afford it. It's impossible. There's not enough minerals in the world. At the same time we're doing this, China's building 2 coal plants every week to make electric cars. But it's one atmosphere. It's not just America. And so we're going to destroy our economy, ship our jobs overseas, do all the mining overseas, give an advantage to the Chinese that they're going to look. China's the biggest source of cars in Mexico right now. They're coming, and they have a 30% cost advantage over everybody else because they control 80% of the minerals, processing of minerals, the government involvement. And I was in BYD headquarters in November. I was in China. They make really good cars, and they're really competitively priced. And they're coming for Europe, and they're coming for the United States. Now, I said in my speech in ADA, there've been waves before. There've been waves of European brands, Japanese brands, Korean brands. These all have been advantageous to dealers. And this Chinese wave might be quite different. It could basically bankrupt car manufacturers who can't compete.
Well,
You
isn't
think
that
so?
the-
You think
the
so, Jeff?
Volvo has the EX30, which is Chinese-made all electrical compact SUV that begins delivering soon, or I believe begins delivering soon. I could be incorrect about that, but I do know that is a
Is they're going to
that
deliver
is
the
a fully
EX90.
Chinese-made vehicle. And I don't want to segue anything out, but I do want to throw something out here real quick because I don't want to go too far in the conversation before I say it. This is the third time I've heard somebody bring up the Walmart situation. I want to point out that we are sometimes so close-minded that we forget things. Do you know Walmart's policy for RVs camping in their parking lot across the country increased their sales substantially? It's one of the most popular things they offer. And Winnebago just revealed their new vehicle. I can't remember what it's called, but it was revealed in late January. It makes perfect sense that Walmart would come out and say, we're going to put EV stations throughout our parking lot, not only for customers, but for what it's done for their business when they look at the RV market. So when we think to ourselves, can a customer from Walmart, is that an EV customer? Do you know how much an RV costs?
Yeah.
Significantly higher than a vehicle, and it's not a necessary utility in your home. It's a play toy. So if you can afford a play toy and you're parking in the parking lot at Walmart and you're using their EV chargers, I'd say they're right on point for their client.
Or you're thinking people are going to hang around waiting for that EV to charge? And
They do overnight.
Well,
The
they do
RV parking at Walmart is an overnight thing. There's no charge for it. It's known across the country, and it's a very, very well utilized campaign that Walmart put in that they have proven and time over time increased their sales. And while I might not frequent a Walmart often, I'm a Target girl myself, I'll just tell you. That doesn't mean that if I'm on a camping thing across the country with my family, expensive RV, that I wouldn't park there, charge my stuff overnight, because let's face it, it's inconvenient. And while I'm there, pick up all the essentials I need for the next day. I think that's brilliant.
It's a smart move, I think.
Yeah, well, and we talked about this a while ago. Not in Indiana anymore, but the Tesla had put in Lafayette, Indiana. They put 30 Tesla charging stations in the Meyer parking lot, which is the cross between, for those of you who aren't from the northern part of the country, it's in between Walmart and Target, as far as so. But the manufacturer in that, for instance, put the charging stations there.
Well,
so
charging station. So I'm the only one, probably weird guy you'll ever meet that actually has a solar power charging station at their house.
No,
I spent $18,000, and I have a solar powered EV charging station up there. So to Jeff's point, yes. But I'm also I'm if you guys don't know this about me, I'm actually a closet prepper as well. So it doesn't surprise that doesn't surprise you that I have like an EV whole home charging station at my house. It's like everyone in my neighborhood, they lose their power. I'm the only house in the neighborhood that's still running all their lights and their TV and their AC even on. But there are solutions. But I mean, look, you're right. Look, EVs will find their niche. I mean, look, you look at Honda this year, hydrogen this spring. You can buy a hydrogen vehicle as of this spring.
EV, not hydrogen, EV.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Now, where are they going to get the hydrogen fuel? Come on now.
No, he's talking about EV. We have a Honda coming, and so is Acura, built by General Motors.
When I mentioned
Honda body
are also
Honda tech.
So
it's coming. Here's the thing. Here's where the train wreck is. California, California has an emissions waiver. Look, they had unique air pollution issues, which CO2 is a global issue. It's not a California issue. They have a waiver. They've set it up where a year from fall, those states fall California have to be 35% EV. No one's 35% EV. California state's only 24%. Every manufacturer had to be at least 35%. So either they move the goalposts or those car manufacturers stop selling cars in California and the 14 states that follow California. So the train wreck's coming in the fall, a year from now, a year and a half, where every manufacturer have to have at least 35% of their sales be EV. Now, some manufacturers won't even have an EV then.
Right.
So what's going to happen? Now, California likely will move the goalposts like they have in the past. But if they set it to 20%, they won't be at 20. Infiniti won't even have an electric car a year and a half. So what do they do? To stop selling cars there? I guess so.
I think you're right. I think they stop. I think that's ultimately what will happen. We've already seen how many big corporations leaving California because of some of the rules and stuff that is not conducive to, having a business and that sort of thing. So I think you're absolutely right. I think that's, if they're given a choice to say, hey, do something that is not possible or that I can't make it the ROI pencil out, then we'll just go over here and just exit out of this state completely. So I think we're going to see a lot of that if they don't move those parameters out.
And then what happens to all of those franchise dealers?
That's a really, really, really great question. That's a really, really, really great
and everybody who works for those dealerships. And
I wrote an article in Digital Dealer magazine about 6-8 months ago that if I were a dealer today, I would have a standalone used car, not affiliated with any manufacturer. I would have a super used car lot. Being a franchise dealer, as Jeff can probably tell you, the headaches are increasing daily.
Can I ask a question? This is more of an inquiry, but does anyone actually know? Because I heard something and I haven't been able to validate it or not validate it, and hence why it's a question. Does anyone know what China actually does as far as their infrastructure goes when somebody is moving and they run out of electricity? Because what I heard is that they just these inexpensive electric cars, they just swap the battery. So somebody's like back here charging batteries, and when somebody pulls into like a gas station, they're just swapping the battery real quick and sending you back down the road. Is there any truth to
Jennifer,
that?
I advocated that 12 years ago when EVs first came on. And, I envisioned, but the it's built into the car today. It's the whole undercarriage of the car.
That's the store I want to own. I'll tell you that right now. Forget it. I don't want to own it. I want to be a battery swapper. The margin in that has to be insane.
I have a gas grill. And I just go exchange the canister and get another canister.
Right.
If there were a way to standardize EVs and to make that battery swap out, I haven't heard what you just said. I advocated a long time ago, and I was told I was full of it because the entire undercarriage of the car is part of the structure is the battery.
It's not practical. Yeah. Besides, I don't want the other person's battery. He misused the battery. I don't want someone else's battery. It's like, and look, they say less. You only use your car, 3% of the time. So like the whole ride share thing, you can share your car. Will you share your house with somebody? No, I'm using my car. I got stuff in my car. Even though I'm not driving, I'm still using it.
Yeah.
Now you're in your house so many hours. You could have a separate family in your house. Would you do that? That's like sharing the battery. It's not practical.
According to Google, and again, first result, no fact finding here. Okay, so let's not hold me hostage over my quick Google search. But as of December 6, 2023, NIO had already deployed 2,200 battery swap stations, with BYP being the largest consumer of that. Also, BYP being one of the largest sellers of those vehicles, according to Google again. So, but what we look at is we go, I agree with you, Jeff. I'm not sharing that kind of thing. Like that's like sharing like things that I just don't share. I'm not a good sharer with a lot of things. So that doesn't work for me either. But if you're going to enforce something, and China's saying that they have one of the fastest growing segments for EV, went in and said, we don't have the infrastructure. That's my assumption. I've done no research on this. Now I want to. Now I need to rabbit hole after this. But they found a way to come in and say, we don't have the infrastructure. Here's an option for something we could do. And I'll tell you, I wouldn't be surprised if that's not what ended up happening here. And I'll be the first ones to own one of those stores because that's brilliant. Whether it's a good idea or not is irrelevant. It is a brilliant idea when it comes to that.
Look at China.
I'm
If you look
sorry.
at China's reasoning for what they're doing, for one, they control the minerals and things like that.
Yep.
They have
Yeah.
a horrible air quality problem. They import a lot of oil. So actually electric cars will help them overcome these issues. And, they have tremendous overcapacity manufacturing. And the China's economy is not very strong. And they're encouraging that they said, I heard this, the Chinese government only fears one thing, the people. People could, try to change the government. They have to keep the economy growing. And automobiles are only 3% of GDP in the United States, but they're 10% in China. Automobile manufacturing creates a lot of jobs. And they're encouraging the Chinese manufacturers to export their cars. They're the world's largest. They exported 5 million cars last year. 3 years ago, they exported none almost.
Yeah.
But they're coming strong. They have a real advantage. They have great cars. They have great styling, and they're affordable. Affordably because they control the minerals, and the government's, encouraging all this. And so China's a different situation. That's like saying EVs are selling well in San Francisco, it'll go the rest of the country. Well, they have a lot of people with drug addiction and poop maps and all kinds of issues in San Francisco. Would that stuff be exported to the rest of the country too, for the same reason? It's a microclimate.
Well, it kind of is though, right? Because
Definitely a microclimate.
we're making decisions here based on bad data. We're making decisions here based upon what other countries are doing, and they're not apples to apples. So just like everything else, it's garbage in, garbage out. We are saying these are the things that are going to be based upon bad data. You all just said you wouldn't do it, but maybe in China that's not an option. Maybe you're forced to do it, and so this is the way it is. Maybe they built their cars to where that swapping is.
The government is definitely encouraging it. It's about 35%. And basically in Beijing, you can only, if you want to buy a car, you're only allowed one, okay, to begin with. If you want a car, you'll get an electric car faster than an ICE car. So there are things like that. And the air quality was really good in Beijing when I was there. Not so good down in Zhuhai and now near Hong Kong. It was a constant fog. Down there, you can own 2 cars. So and the thing is, plug-in hybrids are so expensive, but they're affordable. Our government will not count them for anything. You can make 6 plug-in hybrids for every 1 battery electric car. And to Jason's comment, people drive 35 miles a day. They could drive 100% in electric every day almost. But if they want to drive to California, they could do it because then the gas would come on.
Right.
Yeah, look, we have 2 vehicles in our house. We have an electric one and a gas one. I'm not opposed against ICE, but I'm thinking more from a dealership's perspective. I've watched a lot of comments recently on dealerships just sitting there. I don't know what I'm going to do with these. I don't know what I'm going to do with these. And maybe it's the old car dog in me, but it's like, look, there's an ass for every seat out there. It's just from a dealership.
Not from a math standpoint, Jason. Unfortunately, when we build our supply,
April.
Jason, that's not the dealers I'm talking to.
All right. If you want to talk
That's not the dealers I'm talking to, Jason.
Just for fun, the company whose corporate headquarters are located in California and are responsible for the battery swapping stuff in China is called NIO. If anybody would like to research that later,
we're going to.
That is their thing, and they corporate headquartered in California as of early 2020s, and they are the game changer in China for it. I told you I was going to get fascinated with this. It doesn't even look like I'm researching while I'm listening, right?
I know. You're doing great. But I think this brings apart the whole point, my whole point, which is that if we're going to make decisions in our country based on our democracy, based on our culture, based on what we do, then we need to get our math right and go at it appropriately. So I agree with Jim. I think 10% is kind of the right number. I'm not opposed to EVs.
I think 10% is the right number.
I think that the percentage based on infrastructure and what consumers do. Now, the perfect situation is hybrids. Hybrids have been king forever. I have no earthly idea why in the world. I mean, even in Arizona, it used to be if you got a hybrid, you were able to use the HOV lane. Now it can only be electric only, and it can't even be a plug-in variation. It has to be full. So I think there's a massive miss.
I want to meet a cop who knows what standard features go on which car and is like, that's a hybrid. Like,
EV, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but I think that that's where you know that this has to do with not making right decisions about what the purpose is. If we're not taking the data into account, taking these things like hybrids into account, and we're looking at making data based on other countries or based on an anomaly when we had no inventory, that's where we're missing. If we're going to make decisions moving forward, let's make them based on facts.
Okay, but that's what the manufacturer needs to hear. See, like, I don't necessarily think the problem when we have all these EVs sitting on dealerships' lots aging right now, it's not an infrastructure problem. It's not an audience problem. It comes down to a manufacturer being unresponsible and shoving vehicles down dealerships' throats, all right, because they built too many of these damn things and they didn't do any market research on the things.
Yeah, but who's shoving it down their throat, Jason?
Well, the manufacturers are. I mean, look, I even looked,
No, who's shoving it down the manufacturer?
A really good lobbyist.
This is a trickle-down scenario.
A really good lobbyist is who's shoving it down everybody's throats. A brilliant lobbyist that went.
I think it comes down to the problem of the wholesaler relationship and the retailer relationship. And the wholesaler is going to do exactly what they do in wholesale. All right. And they don't necessarily care what the vehicles are. They're going to wholesale them. They're going to make the dealers take them. Right. Regardless if the resellers can move the product or not. We've seen this happen many, many times in ICE vehicles. Right. We've seen dealerships take obscene amount of inventory. Look, I got some Chrysler friends right now that are sitting on 200 plus days of inventory.
Yeah, you do.
7%.
Yes, you do.
Floor plan, guys, like 7% floor plan. I got buddies out there that are spending $300,000-$400,000 a month in floor plan interest, and they're not EV vehicles; they're ICE vehicles. Anyways.
Look, the government wants only takes consideration the full Monty. They want full battery electric. They plug-in hybrids have a role, and traditional hybrids. If you do anything, actually, you'd reduce CO2 emissions faster if you made every car a hybrid, and it'd be affordable to most people. Mm-hmm. But they don't want that. They want the full Monty, all or nothing. Now they're going to make some adjustments, probably allow some PHEVs, plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, but they're only 1.8% of total sales nationally.
Jeff, you're going to piss off Alexandria Cortez. You know that, don't you?
Pineapple.
Not like everybody. But here's the thing is the consumer ultimately will decide. And what is the number? The consumer will decide the number, but there's big difference between what the government says you need to have and what the consumer really wants. And how do we connect the two? That's the problem.
Well, and when we talk about affordability, if they're forcing them to overbuild the electric vehicle, what is the manufacturer ultimately going to be forced to do? They're going to have to start putting massive rebates on those vehicles to help the dealer get them off the lot. And when that happens, what happens to the price of the ICE vehicle? They have to make their money up somewhere, right? So affordability on this forcing, I think, ends up spilling over.
Rivian and Ford are losing $35,000 per car they sell. How low should they go? Ford lost $4.5 billion. This year will be $5.5 billion on their EVs.
Yeah, that's where I was
going. How low can you go? How much money do you have? I mean, you lose money every one. It's just the volume's the problem.
Jeff, Groucho Marx once said, if we don't sell too many of these, we might break even.
Well, we've seen those same mistakes made on ICE vehicles as well. I just think it's an OEM problem. It's a manufacturer problem.
It's only an OEM problem, and they agreed to 50% market share by 2030. Mm-hmm. They had the opportunity when these rules were being implemented. Okay, remember they're following the Tesla dream. Okay, our stock's be worth a lot of money finally. We're gonna be loved like Tesla is loved. They agreed to 50%, and the law says basically it should be based on available technology and affordability. We know the technology isn't quite there, and the affordability isn't quite there. They agree to 50%.
Tesla sales are declining. Tesla is declining.
Yes, and then the government pulled a fast one. No, we're going to 67%. Only then the manufacturer started squawk. We can't do it. We can't make money doing this. They're finally showing some resistance, but see, each manufacturer is competitive with the other one. Toyota's really rich. Some aren't so rich. The rich ones might say, "Hey, you're going to be gone. I'll survive this, and I'll get more market share." So they're competing with each other. They're not standing up and talking honestly to the government. I think there's 4 positions that manufacturers have. One is we go BK, and we just wipe out the dealers we don't like or don't want, and we get our debt in line, and we move on. We'll merge. We're a small player. We're valuable. We'll merge. 3, a Republican administration will save the day. Okay. Or 4, the government will bail us out. And quite frankly, the people making decisions and the manufacturers won't be in those jobs in 3 or 4 years when these things hit. They'll move on to something else.
And all 4 of those scenarios are horrific for the American consumer.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I see it. Now, I'm sympathetic to them. They're like a Gumby doll. They're squeezed between, government and consumer. And, the government says you got to do it. I guess I got to do it, even though it may not be practical. So it's really a challenge for the manufacturer. And I'm somewhat sympathetic, but they could have stood up early on more with the government saying this is not possible. Again, they're chasing Tesla, who's lowered the price 6 times last year. Why?
I started to say that. Yes.
You did. 6 times. They're running out of customers. They're running out of customers.
What happens when you have competition?
There's only
But
so many of us out there that want to purchase the things. Now, I just want to make a quick comment on the affordability because, the only reason electric SUV popped up on my thing is because it was in the same price point as, the Denali GMC that I was looking at, right? I was able to get a R1S for the same price as this Denali with much more performance specs, attached to it, right? So I do think, and Jeff, you have an ID4 at home. I mean, that's a pretty affordable price range as far as it's comparable to its other, its other competition. So I think affordability is there, but I think what we're all saying, and I think we all get, actually, this might be something we all agree on, is that, we just made too many of these damn things.
Mm-hmm.
That
everything, I mean, isn't that something we all agree on at this point? That's pretty impressive.
Well, when the government says you got to be at 67% 2032, and here's the way to look at this.
Do it because they're going to bail us out, right, Jeff?
Here's the way to look at this. About last year, about 7% of retail sales, because about 10% of EV sales are fleet. Okay, about 7% of retail sales were electric, battery electric vehicle, with concentrations in California and some metropolitan areas.
Now, Hertz dumped them, right? Hertz dumped
And
them.
Tesla's nearly 60% of the 7%. The OEMs, about 2 to 3% of their retail sales last year were electric, and we have a 114-day supply at 2 to 3%. What's that? That's telling us something.
yeah,
But
that's,
Jeff,
Here's
didn't
what
Hertz drop them?
Yes, Hertz did drop them, and here's the point, and I think it was Jim you that posted the I'm sorry article from Furley, but the reality is that the manufacturers, the reason they didn't fight the government when they pushed on this was because, like you said, they saw Tesla, but they also looked at incorrect data. They made decisions based on data right then and said, hey, here's our opportunity to maybe, push the dealer to do different things or to go to direct to consumer or to do these other things. This is our opportunity. That's why they didn't push back, because they were looking at bad data.
What?
No,
Wait a minute.
they're looking
I
at
don't think they looked at any
1.8 million.
I don't
cars
think they
last year,
looked at
guys.
any data.
I think they looked at bad
million
data.
cars.
No,
They
they're
looked
looking.
at bad data. They looked at data based on supply and demand when there was no supply. You can't use
There was
math.
no demand.
It's not just that.
When everything was in a shortage, yeah.
There's only three reasons, maybe. One reason is government mandates in China, Europe, the United States, which is significant.
Mhm.
And 2, chasing the Tesla dream.
Yep.
And those 2 things have pushed them in a direction that they're probably not so happy where they are right now, but they're in part responsible for that. And they're left holding the bag.
Well,
the
Jeff, this
saving
week
grace, though, is
Germany just rolled back some of the mandates. Did you see that?
Mhm.
Yeah, their EV sales took a hit in January. And you can't only look at 1 month because these are very sensitive to incentives. They're sensitive to incentives, and then the German government took away incentives, and the sales just crashed because people anticipating this happening bought in December. So we'll see where it balances out.
I mean, at the end
Yeah,
of the
the
day, I don't
Europeans
know
are
the
backing
total
off.
EV sales count for last year, but I do know that last year Tesla sold 1.8 million vehicles in the United States. And the year prior to that, they sold 1.3 and some change.
What percentage is that?
1.8 million people decided last year to buy a Tesla. Just think on that.
I'm happy that
Upper
1.8
class,
million people could afford
affluent
it.
upper class.
True.
Listen,
I'm
not
happy
only
they could
that,
afford it. Good for them.
But So
That
we
was
could
a bunch of
we could make an
Jasons.
argument for an $80,000 car. I drive a $70,000 Mercedes.
That was a bunch of Jasons. That was affluent upper class.
It's
No, there's not that many preppers out there that do weird
it's not.
things. Do.
It's
And not every
fundamentally
prepper
important that it is fundamentally important that while we lobby for or fight for or collaborate on why we have a view on one side or the other, that we remember that both are okay. It should not be mandated.
I wish Max was
I'm
on
not
the-
educated enough governmentally to say, or in the way that it's being lobbied, to say that it should or should not be, or why it is. It would be pure fact, not pure fact. It would be pure speculation, just like it is for everybody else here. But I don't want us to lose sight of the fact that it is okay to be on either side of the realm, so long as you are respectful and thoughtful of the other one, and there can be a middle ground.
Well, and I think there's been a middle ground in the past. Like they've pushed your miles per gallon, right? Like mandated that from a standpoint, but we made sure based on data that it would be capable to be done. Where we failed in this circumstance is that we did not take into account any data when putting out these numbers of 67% and that sort of thing. So now here's the unintended advantage of all of this craziness, because I'm always trying to find the positive. You know, the whole idea of we don't need dealers, yeah, that's out the window. Because we all know the only way people are going to buy an electric now is when the dealer sells it to the consumer.
But I'm not supposed to sell you something. But I'm not supposed to sell you something you don't want.
Yeah, right. With these
So
wonderful
how's this
new-
pushy salesman put me into something? Look, I don't have any
My gun to your head.
from a lot. I've sold every car I ever got. I don't have any 63 Oldsmobiles or whatever. We sold every car, one way or the other. Jason likes that.
Every purple PT Cruiser, baby. It's
The
gone.
problem is I'm not supposed to
I had an
oversell you.
Aztec.
I will show
I
you the
sold a lot of Aztecs, and I'm telling you, I had to sell those things. Nobody was buying it. Okay, so.
I sold Forenzas
Okay, there you go.
Gazelle, like
and
Gazelle.
Fieros.
Like, look,
I sold Fieros, for heaven's sake.
we're here to inform consumers, and a lot of salespeople have never driven an electric car, so I want managers to drive them, become familiar. And it's understandable. A lot of customers have taken weeks to shop for their car. They know a lot about the one car. I got to know like 50 models. They only look
180 days on average.
But I shouldn't try to have to sell you something you don't really have a desire for. That's called overselling. But now that's what they want us to do.
Exactly.
Well, wait, don't we have some wonderful new guidelines regulating that right now?
I wish I knew who made that Facebook
You
user
see,
comment.
car sales rule. Yeah.
Whoever made that Facebook user comment, I want to throw something in on this and then I'll be quiet for a minute. Start marketing the point of sale tax credit. Actually, Tesla did in the last quarter of last year when they reduced the prices and increased their sales by over 20% for the Model 3, which, by the way, is marketed on their website at under $30,000. And how they market it is they show the tax credit as part of the incentive, even though we wouldn't know you wouldn't sign that way. That's already happening.
And I know all of my
Rivian was doing it. That's how they got me on it.
websites and
Well,
We do that. We're also doing totally separate EV market campaigns
How would
based
you-
on where chargers are at.
Yeah.
So
how would you like to
if
have bought a
I have-
Tesla for
I mean, my Ford store is
$145,000?
nowhere near chargers, right?
One thing about Tesla owners is that the average Tesla owner is probably $15,000 underwater because of the lower price decreases. So they're not going to have a happy time when they go trade their car, buy another Tesla or not. They're going to be well underwater.
Well, good thing over 80%.
They bought a Tesla for $135,000 that you can now buy new for $80,000.
So did everybody in America the last 6 months of last year when we had an
Yeah,
inventory
right.
shortage.
Yeah,
Boom.
seriously, I love it.
That's-
It's the best. I'll tell you,
Everybody.
if you're a performance enthusiast, I'm like the best bang for your buck right now. It's an EV. It's just you can get them cheap. They lease cheap, blast to drive.
I mean, I
We
talk
got-
a lot
we
of
got
shit from your
7
customers
minutes
who drive the
left.
car with premium gas that doesn't get good gas mileage.
Right?
So
7
I'm not
minutes
all
left.
time.
I'm going to start with Jennifer. Jennifer, give me your closing statements. We got 7 minutes.
Well, my closing statements, and I think one of the things one of the points we didn't talk about enough that Jeff brought up is when the manufacturers had a chance to collaborate and set more realistic guidelines, governmental targets, they failed to do so. And in that, they've failed the dealers and they're going to fail the American consumer. And again, I say it all the time, free market, let people buy what they want to buy. And it's not that I'm anti-environment, but I'm a realist when it comes to those things. And EVs are not good for the environment. They're no better than ICE. And some of the data says they're worse. So if we are failing to hit the whole objective, which is to be kinder to our atmosphere and our environment, we're not even anywhere near that target. So what?
Collaborate. They should have collaborated. Vanilla Ice told them that 25, 30 years ago. Collaborate. April, give me a closing statement.
Jennifer, spot on with your closing statement. At the end of the day, we are going to all be paying for the EVs, whether you buy an EV or not. Every single person on this broadcast or watching it will be paying for the EVs in one way or another. So we just have to work together and hopefully get through this storm, and hopefully we don't have any, major casualties on the other side of this massive,
Kumbaya. Okay, yeah, okay. Jason, jump in there.
Hey, Switzerland, babe,
I'm just thinking of what the dealers are having to go through right now, and there's an opportunity out there. It's we're gonna have to sell this car. We're not gonna be able to just clerk this car. So if you're out there and you're sitting in this boat, you got to get real serious about your marketing strategies. You really got to understand your audiences. And this is not the first time that an OEM has shoved us, with a lot of inventory of a car that we don't necessarily have a market for, but dealers are very resilient. You guys will find an audience. You'll find a way. We'll get through this.
Hey, Jim Farley just set a new record. He lost more money than Jack Nasser.
Someone should make him a plaque.
I'll send him a trophy.
Bobbie, give me your closing statement.
I mean, I just want to have an electrical car so that when I am late, as I always am, I can blame it on the fact that my car was charging. That's really what I'm doing.
$4.5 billion, and they're opening Blue Oval City. Jeff, you're going to close out the broadcast. Let me have your closing statement.
Well, first, thanks for having me. I thought it was a very lively discussion. I think it's wrong for California to have an emission mandate. 14 states follow. We need a national standard for emissions. It's impossible for manufacturers to have certain car sales, certain states and other states. It's a real problem. The federal government should count traditional hybrids for something and plug-in hybrids, because hybrids are more affordable than battery electric, as to have an easier transition. And I would encourage everybody to read this article by Mark Mills. You can just Google it. Electric Vehicles for Everyone, The Impossible Dream. It's not against it. It's no axe to grind. It talks about critical minerals, the charging infrastructure, a lot of the barriers to this transition. It's too rapid.
What was that book again?
I'm going to add it in the comments.
It's an article, and you can Google it. It's Electric Vehicles for Everyone, The Impossible Dream. It's the best single article on the subject that I've found, and you will learn so much. It's long. You'll learn so much about the subject.
Fantastic. We've got a couple minutes left. Jason, any additional closing statements?
We just got to get back to selling, Like the market is what the market is. Your inventory is what it is. Stop complaining and let's just get back to the grind of moving this metal. Look, we have very resilient dealer bodies out there. All right, we're gonna find a way. It's 6 months from now, this is not even going to be a topic. It's just a topic right now, right? So I'm confident.
No, wait a second, Jason. I know you're our resident communist, but that's a little.
Jason is not a communist. I'm
a communist. I'm just
the big play is the Chinese. Yes. Our government mandates and European mandates are allowing opening for affordable, desirable Chinese electric cars to come in and take market share, and that could really upset the apple cart. Weaker manufacturers could be critically endangered by that, because their cars are substantially more affordable and have tremendous performance, and they have great styling. And they're really going to, even though we have a 29 or 28% tariff, that may not stop them coming in North America, building plants in Mexico to avoid tariffs. And they're going to come undercut the belly of the European auto market. And this could have dire ramifications for manufacturers in Europe. So these government mandates are allowing an opening for Chinese cars, and they have tremendous overcapacity production in China, and they're coming. And the question is, what impact this will have?
They can play the game. You got to keep your eye for VinFast. I've driven the vehicles. I've seen the vehicles. You know, if I had to buy a Toyota RAV4 or the VinFast, what do they call it, the VF5 or whatever it is, it's the same price.
BYD is a company to watch. They're vertically integrated. They make their own batteries, coming on really strong and a real competitor. They outsell Tesla in China now, electric cars. I was at the headquarters in November. I bought stock in BYD. You know, I'm not advocating anyone buy stock in B. That's not my purpose.
Oh, no, don't do that, please. Guys, we got to end the show.
Stock in
If you
BYD.
want to use
We've
EV
hit the
from
wall.
Tesla versus dumping them, so this would be
Don't buy stock. Don't do that. I'm sorry I mentioned that. But when I was at their headquarters, I said, I'm here to check out my company, you know. So
Okay, we've hit the wall, guys. Wave
All right.
to the audience.
Thank you, everyone.
thank you.